A determinant is a number, just a single number, that can be calculated from the elements of a matrix. So we have a formula. It's a very simple, easy formula that gives us a number. And our answer is that number. Okay. The reason that we need it, it's useful in a few different things, but we have to be able to do the determinant before you can do the stuff on the back of the page, which is finding the inverse. Okay. So the determinant is useful in finding the inverse of a matrix. It's part of the formula for the back page. Okay. Most of the time, I will just write out determinant or DET, but you might see this.
You know, Ms. Johnson, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm low-key thinking I don't have this.
So if you see this, it looks like absolute value, but in the matrix world, it means determinant. I'm not going to give that to you, but it would pop up on like the ACT or something. So I just wanted to show you. Here's a big thing. You can only find the determinant of a square matrix. What is a square matrix? Well, they're all kind of like a box. What's special? What's the same? The number of rows and the number of columns are the same. So like a 2 by 2, a 3 by 3, a 4 by 4. A 2 by 2 matrix, finding the determinant is really easy. Those are the only ones that I'm going to make you learn how to do by hand. The others are a lot more complicated. The bigger the matrix, the harder it is. Okay. So a 2 by 2 matrix, if I have this one right here, and I just label the elements A, B, C, D, the way you find the determinant, in parentheses, you do A times D, so you multiply those two, and then minus B times C. That's it.
Really?
It's very important that you make sure you do these two elements first. Okay? Because in subtraction, it matters what order you do them. Okay. So if we go to example number 1, I'm going to multiply 5 times 0 minus, and then I'm going to multiply -1 times 3. And you can just type that whole thing into your calculator. 5 times 0, oh, I put 50. 5 times 0 minus -1 times 3. And you get 3.
See, once you put numbers in there, it's not that hard. A lot of letters if you mess with them.
Any questions? All right, number 2. What numbers am I going to multiply first? The 7 and 2. 7 times 2. Then what do I put? Minus, and then I multiply 1 times 6. Alright, now, I'm not going to give you this formula on the test, but just like with Unit 1, you are going to be able to make a cheat sheet, so you can put the formula on your cheat sheet. Alright. So we have 7 times 2 minus 1 times 6. I keep my multiply sign. And we get 8. I do expect for you right now to write this work down. When you do the worksheet tomorrow, I will expect to see the work or you won't get full credit.
Well, it kind of helps you, like, you can't make any, like,
Yeah. If you miss it, then I could go back and see. If you don't put any work and you miss it, then you're out of luck. Alright, I want you to try numbers 3 and 4. Alright, so number 3, Andrew, what did you put in the first set of parentheses?
Negative 4 times 3.
Yep, negative 4 times 3 minus, and then Clayton, what did you put in the second set?
Negative 1 times 11.
Negative 1 times 11, very good. And Brody, whenever you type that in the calculator, tell me what answer you get.
Okay, I got you.
Negative 1 is correct. Good. All right, number 4, Aiden, what did you put in the first set of parentheses?
5 times 2.
Good. Minus. Katie Lynn, what did you put in the second set?
8 times 3.
Good. And when you type that in, Ashley, what did you get? Negative 4 is correct. Very good.
I think I got a pretty good question for you.
Okay, what?
So when will we know when it's not minus?
If it's asked for the determinant, it will always be minus.
Okay. So we're just going to be minus.
Yes. Yep. All right. Now your calculator has this formula inside of it, and it can do the determinant. If it's a 2 by 2 matrix, it's going to be more work to try to type the whole thing in your calculator than just to do the formula. But you might be given a question like this that says to find it using your calculator, and you might want to know the steps for doing that. So I've listed them out. So if you look on your calculator, you see this button right here where I'm pointing. It says matrix above it. That section in the calculator has a lot of matrix calculations in it. That's where we're going to go. But to get to matrix, it's in blue. You have to hit the blue second button first. Alright, so you hit second and then that X with the negative 1 button. And then you need to scroll over to math. And the first option there says DET. That's determinant. So if you hit enter, it's going to bring it there, and then you type in your matrix using alpha zoom. And this is a 3 by 3 matrix. So when I go to alpha zoom, I need to change my dimensions to be a 3 by 3 and type in all of these numbers. And you should get 39. So that might be something else that you write on your cheat sheet for the test, which won't be till after fall break. So now we're going to get into the inverse, which I told you was a little bit harder because there's more to it, okay, than determinant. So the inverse.
At this time, we need sophomore boys for pictures.
The inverse of matrix A, just like when we talked about inverses in Unit 1, we use a -1 exponent. So matrix A, if I'm talking about the inverse, that's A with a -1. So here's kind of an explanation of how inverses work. When you have a number, let's say my number is 5. If I multiply that number by its inverse, or sometimes we use the word reciprocal, which it would be 1 over 5. So if I take 5 times its inverse, 1 over 5. Does anybody know what that equals? 5 times 1 over 5. 1. If you take 12 times 1 over 12, what do you get?
12. 1.
1. 100 times 1 over 100 is going to give you 1. So when you multiply a number by its reciprocal or its inverse, you get 1. When you take a matrix and multiply it by its inverse, you get the identity matrix, which, if you'll remember, is the one that had the ones going this way and then the zeros everywhere else.
So does an identity matrix always have to be ones and zeros?
Yes. It specifically will have ones going from this corner all the way down, and everything else will be zeros. Now here's really important. Put a big star by this last bullet. If the determinant of a matrix is equal to 0, then the inverse does not exist. So to find the inverse, you have to start by finding the determinant, because that's part of the formula. But if you do that, you do the A times D minus B times C, and it equals 0, your inverse does not exist. And you can write DNE. Alright, so here's the formula. We start out with the fraction 1 over the determinant. So you find the determinant first, and then you do 1 over that number. Times, and then we have a matrix. In your matrix, the A, element A and element switch places. So A and D switch places. So you take your original matrix, and the number that's here at the top goes down there at the bottom, and the bottom goes to the top. Okay. Also, your B and C switch, they don't switch places, they switch signs. And we write that as negative B, negative C. So if the number up here was a positive 5, you put a negative 5. If it was a negative 2, you'd put a positive 2. Okay. And then you just type this in your calculator. So let's do a real example. You always, when you're finding the inverse, you start out by finding your determinant, which is what we did on the front. A times D, 5 times 1, minus B times C, 3 times 1.
So the determinant is A times B minus D times C.
A times D,
A times D
minus B times C. A lot of people kind of just get used to drawing that X, and you don't have to necessarily remember, okay, which one's A, which one's D. You just remember you multiply those two.
Right.
And then multiply those two. Yep. All right, so type this into your calculator or in your head. What's 5 times 1? What's 3 times 1? What's 5 minus 3? 2. So your determinant is 2.
Hold up, wait a minute. Watch that.
And so to find my inverse, it's 1 over my determinant, which what I just found was what? 2. So 1 over 2 times of my original matrix, what numbers switch places?
1 and 5.
The 1 and the 5. What numbers switch signs?
The 3 and the 1.
The 3 and that 1. So the 3 stays in the top right, but it becomes -3. The 1 stays in the bottom left, but it becomes -1. And then we're just going to type that in the calculator. So I do, to get my fraction, alpha y equals 1 over 2 times alpha zoom to get my matrix. One, -3, -1, 5. I get 1/2. You will usually have fractions for these. Not always, but a lot of times. So we have 1/2, -3/2, -1/2, and 5/2. And that's your answer. Any questions that you can think of so far about this?
Nah.
Let's try number 6. So we start out by doing the determinant. A times D, and you do your determinant of the original matrix, not before you flip it. You don't flip anything yet. 0 times 2 minus -1 times 0.5. And we get 0.5. To find my inverse, I do 1 over the determinant. So 1 over 0.5 times,
Pardon this interruption, but I need Ella Bustle.
and so now in my matrix that I'm going to multiply by, 2 numbers need to switch places. What are those 2 numbers? The 2 and the 0. Okay, so 2 comes up here, 0 goes down there. 2 numbers need to switch signs. What are those 2 numbers?
Ella.
Yep, the -1 becomes a +1, and the 0.5 becomes a -0.5. And then you can just type that in your calculator. And you should get 4, 2, -1, and 0. Are there any questions? Bless you.
Thank you.
Are we ready to go on to number 7? Okay. Number 7. Start by finding the determinant. -5 times -4 minus 10 times 2. And you get 0.
Andrew Cash, call the front office, Andrew Cash.
Did I just tell you something about determinants being 0?
They don't
Wait,
exist.
they do not exist.
What doesn't exist?
The inverse.
The inverse.
does not
The
exist.
determinant is 0. That's okay. If the question was find the determinant, you just put 0. You don't put does not exist. But the inverse, so inverse, and you can just put DNE, does not exist. I want you to do number 8 on your own. Alright, so you should have got the answer on number 8. 8/3, -3, 1, and -1. Does that look like what you got on your paper? Are there any questions? Now, your calculator also can do the inverse for you. So instead of having to go through that formula, it does it. However, you still need to know how to do it by hand. I'm going to make you show all of your work tomorrow when you're practicing and on the test, but you can use your calculator as a way to check your answer. Okay. So in the calculator, you actually don't have to go to that matrix menu. It's a little bit easier to do the inverse. So you type in the matrix first. So if we're doing this example, alpha zoom, so you type in the matrix and then you take your cursor kind of outside of it, and you're going to give it a -1 exponent. So you can, this button right here will do that, or you can type in the little rooftop button and type in a -1. Okay. And then you hit enter, and then you might need to do math, enter, math, enter, changes it to a fraction.
Pardon this interruption.